What's up, YouTube? This is your boy John from Project Ellsworth, and I am back with you today to give you my review of the 1982 film Friday the 13th, Part 3. Good morning, everybody. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to click that subscribe button. If you're already subscribed to the channel, what's up, folks? It's good to see you guys again. Friday the 13th Part 3 was written by Martin Kitrosier and Carl Watson. It was directed by Steve Miner, starring Dana Kimmel, Larry Zerner, Paul Kratka, and Richard Brooker as Jason. So our story begins with a miserable couple inside of their country store that also doubles as their home. While the wife is constantly browbeating the husband, unbeknownst to them, they are being stalked by Jason. Eventually, Jason takes both of them out, him with a meat cleaver and her with a sewing needle. And this is the point where the movie actually begins. Here we meet a van full of 20-somethings heading down to a cabin by a lake. I wonder what lake that is. Not too far into this part of the story, we find out that our main character, Chris, portrayed by Dana Kimmel, was attacked near this lake house a couple of years ago, and she's sort of returning to the scene of the crime to face her demons. So after a little bit of time passes, two of our characters, Vera and Shelley, take off to head to town to pick up supplies at the country store, and while they're at this country store, they have a run-in with some lame-ass three-man biker gang. So once Vera and Shelley finally get out of this store, Shelley nervously and clumsily backs the car into the biker gang's three bikes. He knocks him over. Needless to say, these three are not very happy at all. So Shelley pulls away with Vera in the car. They head back to the cabin, and the biker gang, they follow them back. The intention is to simply steal all of their gas. Only the toughest biker gangs sneak in and steal your gas. It's ridiculous. Once they've successfully siphoned a couple cans of gas out of the vehicles, they probably should have left. Yeah, they should have left. Later that evening, Chris finally sits down with her boyfriend Rick to explain what happened to her the night that she was attacked at this cabin. She said that a man snuck up behind her and he had a knife. He was a hideous looking man, he was grotesque, and he was almost inhuman. But that came out more like, he was a hideous looking man, he was grotesque, he was almost inhuman. Goofball. Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D was and is an enormous part of the Friday the 13th franchise. It was an incredibly important film. It managed to knock E.T. out of first place in the box office for the first time in seemingly forever. It was a huge financial success. It was the second highest grossing horror film in 1982, only behind Poltergeist. I've read that this was actually supposed to be the final film in a Friday the 13th trilogy, but the huge financial success that this movie had warranted more films. I would also say that this is the movie that pretty much injected Friday the 13th into mainstream and pop culture. Prior to this, with Part 1 and Part 2, 1980 and 1981, Friday the 13th was definitely a blip on the radar. It was known by a lot of people, but after Friday the 13th Part 3 came out, Jason Voorhees in this franchise was known by pretty much everybody. I was 11 years old when this movie came out, and I remember the commercial for this movie being ran on television nonstop. I couldn't wait to see this movie. The commercials made me want to see this movie so bad, but like I said, I was only 11 years old and there was no way in the world my parents were letting me go see this thing. This movie also stands out as being the last Friday the 13th movie that I did not go see in the movie theater. If you include the remake and you include Freddy vs. Jason, there are 12 films in the Friday the 13th universe. 8 of those films were made in the 1980s. For me, this is the quintessential Jason Voorhees Friday the 13th movie. Everything about this movie just bleeds 80s to me. The 3D effects, the soundtrack and score, the clothing in the movies, the way that the actors look, the way the film looks, just everything about this movie for me just is 80s quintessential Jason. I also enjoyed the effects in this movie. I think that going with the 3D aspect was kind of gutsy, and looking back at it now, and even watching it back then, the 3D effects are kind of hokey. There's a lot of stuff in here forced, like the tip of a baseball bat and the end of a broom handle, and a snake jumping at the camera, a guy holding up an eye. Things like that were kind of goofy and hokey and felt very forced. But there are 2 kills in this movie that are pretty legendary in the Friday the 13th franchise, actually, in my opinion. One is the harpoon gun, right when Jason gets his mask, the first kill after he puts the mask on that we see on camera anyway. There was a kill in here that he may or may not have that mask on, but whatever. The first kill on camera with Jason wearing the hockey mask is in this movie, and there's a kill where he squeezes some dude's head, he squeezes Rick's head and his eye pops out. This movie also contains my favorite Jason kill of all time. It's when the dude's walking around inside of the cabin on his hands, and Jason takes the machete and just hacks him right in half. That was definitely my favorite kill up to that point, and still today, that is still my favorite kill in the Friday the 13th franchise. This movie also has my favorite portrayal of Jason throughout the entire Friday the 13th franchise. I thought that Richard Brooker's portrayal of Jason was the best ever on screen for me. I liked the way, I liked his physical mannerisms. I liked the way he moved around. The scene at the end of the movie when he's like scratching at the window trying to get out and then runs through the door. I liked the way that he carried that character, carried himself as that character. And I liked everything, even the look about Jason in this movie was my favorite. The green shirt, the dark pants and boots. I just liked everything about his portrayal of this character. When I think of Jason, I think of Richard Brooker as Jason in Friday the 13th Part 3. As far as the acting overall in this movie goes, it passes. I mean, there's nothing Oscar-worthy. There's nothing great about the acting in this movie. There's really not much terrible about the acting in this movie, but it's nothing noteworthy. For me, again, what stole the show was Richard Brooker as Jason. So Friday the 13th Part 3. I remember watching this movie seemingly 1,000 times as a little kid on cable television. So not only is this movie hugely important to me personally, I think that this was a very important spoke in the wheel of this franchise. I have to assume that if you're watching this video, you have probably seen Friday the 13th Part 3. If you have not, watch Friday the 13th Part 3. Incredibly important movie in not only the Friday the 13th franchise, but in horror movie history. If you have seen Friday the 13th Part 3, watch it again. Such a great movie. Have you seen this flick? How did you feel about Friday the 13th Part 3? Was it as important to you as it was to me? Could you care less or did you love it? Leave me some comments down below and let's talk about it. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you really like this video and you have been enjoying my content, please do me a huge personal favor. Click that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Have a kick-ass day, and thank you for watching.